We spoke about it at the top of the show today, and it would be totally remiss of us not to mention this in the passing, in case fans of certain clubs were somewhat worried today that the news incoming would be bad. Well, it's not, because today we found out that no Premier League clubs have been charged with profit and sustainability breaches for the 3-year period between 21 and 24. And Simon, that news took you by surprise, because you were, and I know you're not targeting Leicester City for any other reason than you thought they might have to sweat a bit. You thought they might be in a bit of trouble.
I think they've gotten away with some very clever legal manoeuvring. I think they've gotten away with some badly constructed rules. And I think the game, if it's going to enforce governance, needs to enforce governance that is enforceable. Because quite frankly, Leicester have tap danced around the Football League. They've tap danced around the Premier League. And without the detail as to exactly what they've done in this instance, the announcement from the Premier League refers to jurisdiction, which was the previous challenges that both the Football League and the Premier League had with Leicester. Whether the appetite has weakened from the Premier League because they've spent so much money on current cases, or whether just the framework of their own regulations are proving to be unsustainable and unenforceable, and clubs are, because of the adroitness and adeptness and the financial resources that clubs have now, are more challenging to the often badly constructed football bureaucracy. I don't know, but my initial perception is, if you've managed to find a way through it, I don't warm to it. I applaud it, because it's probably what I would have done in the same instance, and I'd have sort of gone, got away with that one.
Right. So Stefan Borson, FFP expert, amongst many other things, joined us live in the studio. How come this has come up about in this fashion? Leicester, Forest, Everton, Chelsea were all thought to be at risk.
Well, look, you can break them all down. I mean, if we just start with Leicester, I think we have to be slightly careful in terms of analysing what they've done. Clearly, there was the case that's now apparently being appealed by the Premier League, this jurisdiction case. Now, it's worth saying right from the off, the appeal from the Premier League is extraordinary in itself, right? Because there are really limited ways in which you can appeal an appeal. Right, because remember, the Leicester case on jurisdiction was, I think it was at least two previous High Court judges who were on that panel. But the Premier League, to win in their appeal against the Leicester last season's case, would have to show that decision could not reasonably been reached by any commission or appeal board which had applied its mind properly to the facts of the case.
Well,
I mean, that is
how broad do you want that to be?
Well, it's an extraordinarily high barrier.
That's what I mean,
right? Because you're talking about they're effectively saying that their own appeal panel that was constituted under the Premier League rules was not fit for purpose to win.
Right.
So what they're doing, appealing it in the first place, is beyond me. I mean, notwithstanding what Simon said about how he feels uncomfortable that they've got round it by legal mechanisms and sort of looking for lacunas in the law, in the rules. I mean, it's still surprising the Premier League have attacked it. Put that to one side. I think you then have to look separately at what's just happened for 23-24. Now, we all thought that there was a good chance that because the EFL had actually said that Leicester's own numbers said they were going to fail for 23-24, that they were going to fail. But in fairness to them, what they may well have done here is sold players aggressively in the year, in their relegation year, and they may well have cut their wage bill very, very dramatically. They were the first team to go down with a wage bill of almost £200 million. And to have managed to get under the limit, they may well have halved that wage bill. And if they have done that, then actually I think they deserve credit for complying with 23-24.
Of course.
So because on the face of it, the 23-24 non-breach appears to be just because they've managed to hit the limits.
Why are the Premier League referencing jurisdiction?
I think they're separate. I don't see there's an overlap.
Right, so this has nothing to do with the 23-24, the 21-22, 22-23 and 23-24. This is their reference back to something else.
I think what they're saying, and that's what I'm hearing as well from other people, what they're trying to say is there is still a case that's outstanding where if the Premier League win on jurisdiction, then Leicester are going to be found to have been in breach of 22-23 by £20 million. They will have been found to have not cooperated. They will have been found to have not given an early admission. And therefore, we can kind of estimate it's going to be 5 to 6 points, probably.
But am I right in understanding what you've just said? That if indeed that they're able to appeal that on the basis of the manner in which they're able to appeal, it's practically impossible for them to achieve that.
Yeah, I don't think the Premier League will win, but I'm often not right about these things.
So not only is the governance flawed, and the gap between what happened when we all know that by the governance that was put in place, Leicester breached PSR. What we couldn't capture them by was whose jurisdiction were they under when they went down into the Football League, so they had to produce accounts going forward, which they refused to do, which would have shown them breaching, and the Football League had no sanctionability on them. The Premier League got caught in the same trap. So we now know that the governance doesn't work in that situation. And now we're finding that the appeal process prohibits the Premier League from being able to have a meaningful appeal, because the way the appeal process is constructed around what they can actually challenge, it's virtually unchallengeable.
No, I wouldn't say that.
How do you challenge it? You put reasonable people on the panel, and you have to call them unreasonable.
No, hang on. They've had their appeal. So there's already been 2 cases. There's already been an independent commission and an appeal. The appeal, with an incredibly high-quality panel, found in favour of Leicester City and Nick DeMarco. Mm-hmm. That really should be the end of it. I mean, the Premier League, I don't think the Premier League should be going. They've appealed the appeal. And the only way you can appeal
Finish
the
that
appeal...
for me. What were you about to say there, Stefan? You don't think the Premier League
I don't think
should
the Premier League should be appealing an appeal. Not on the basis...
So at this moment in time, they've had a case which they lost. Then they appealed it. And now what you're suggesting is the Premier League are appealing the appeal.
No, the Premier League won the first case.
Right.
This is on 22-23.
Yeah.
The Premier League won the first case.
Leicester overturned it on appeal.
Leicester appealed it. Yeah. Nick DeMarco made the strong argument that they weren't actually a Premier League club on the 30th of June.
So the Premier League are now appealing.
But the Premier League are now going back and saying, we are going to appeal the appeal. And the basis on which you can appeal is such a tiny window. Could not reasonably have been decided by anybody. I mean,
so the original construct of the independent panel was deemed to be unreasonable by the appeal panel.
No,
by the reference points that you're suggesting.
It's not unusual that an appeal, which has higher quality panel members and judges,
so it's not unreasonable
believes the first one was wrong.
So it's not unreasonable then to have a higher quality of evidence based upon what Leicester then submitted in their appeal, which they didn't put into the original hearing, may well be appealable.
But that's not the window. The window for an appeal of an appeal...
Yeah.
I know this is going to lose people, but what I'm saying is the Premier League have got to show that this is so outlandish, that decision by the appeal that found in favour of Leicester was so outlandish that nobody else could possibly have found it.
Yeah.
I just think that's extremely unlikely.
Yeah. Are you surprised to be sitting in studio with us this lunchtime, Stefan, telling us, quite rightly, that no Premier Leagues have been charged with PSR breaches? Did you expect this today?
Well, we were all led to believe at least one had breached.
Right.
So it was always likely that was Leicester. We know that the other clubs who were kind of on the list and why they didn't. So you've got Manchester United. We know the reasons that they didn't breach were because they had the 21-22 £40 million COVID allowance, and they were given certain allowances for the share trades. We know that Chelsea, of course, they sold those hotels to themselves.
Yeah.
We also know that in the year that's just been tested, on the 28th of June, they transferred their women's team intra-group, and we know that will have created a profit. It seems like that has created a very, very large profit, probably somewhere in the order of 150 to 175 million pounds. Now, that transaction itself needs to be fair market valued by the Premier League. We don't know whether that has happened yet. It's only been 6 months, and we know that these things take a long time. But if Chelsea have passed, it's because of those intra-group. They have passed according to the announcement.
Yes.
It's because of those intra-group transactions. How we can confirm that until the fair market value assessment has been completed, I'm not sure.
But you don't need to, because the Premier League have.
Well, no, I mean the Premier League.
So if the Premier League are not charging anybody under PSR rules, then they're happy with everything it is, aren't they?
No, the Premier League have not completed, again, going by what very reputable sources have said, the Premier League have not completed their fair market value assessment of the sale of the women's team to themselves. If you remember, the hotel sales took until September of the following year.
Yeah, but if I remember correctly, you told me at the time that Chelsea were in breach of their obligations to declare to the Premier League the nature of a transaction. They had a certain amount of time to do it, and the fact they didn't do it, they did it 9 months later, would have put them behind the 8 ball, and it didn't.
Oh no, that was in terms of the specifics of the rules.
You keep on coming in here and telling me that Chelsea are going to breach, and I keep on telling you year on year that they're not, that they're going to find their way through it. However they engineer it, wherever the opportunity is, they do. And you and I both sat here with Leicester, and both you and I felt that they were going to get sanctioned, and we felt that the Premier League were double motivated to get them sanctioned.
Sure, you've got to separate the operational losses of Chelsea, which is still running at over £200 million a year, and being permitted, including in this season, to sell their own assets.
It's not difficult
intra-group. Well, it is difficult because what happened
because
was...
we all know if you take their spend pattern and their wages, they were going to breach unless there was something else that was in the mix. Everybody understood that at half a brain.
They didn't. Everybody understood they were going to sell players, and that's exactly what they told people.
No, you did.
No. This is what they told people. They were selling players. What they didn't tell anybody is actually their plan, which was to sell the hotels to themselves and also to sell the women's team to themselves.
But it was always an established principle from my side of the table, Stefan, that the idea that people like you were advancing was that they were going to be a hostage to fortune about needing to sell players on the basis of the fact they were going to be sold into a buyer's market rather than a seller's market, and they were in trouble. And I sat across the table from you saying, these are guys that run very significant businesses that will understand what they have to do and why they have to do it. They'll do one of two things. They'll either price it into their business plan and accept the consequences of it, or they'll have a solution to it, and it won't just be around player sales.
Sure. And my theory was that it was priced in.
Yeah.
So what they've actually done is smarter than that.
Yeah, which was they've
managed to
dispose assets.
Defend an attempt by the clubs in June of last year to stop any of these sorts of sales intra-group. They won that vote. Indeed. That vote did not go through, and it has not come back. Now, none of this solves the problem that they've got with UEFA, and also none of it solves the operational performance of the business going forward, because they continue to lose over £200 million per annum. So you can't keep selling assets intra-group, because eventually you run out of those assets.
You have to bring your revenues up.
Having said that, this season will again be a challenge.
A club that doesn't seem to be that concerned about shirt sponsorship.
None of us.
So there must be something involved,
which is extraordinary, of course.
None of us saw Chelsea selling hotels to themselves or the women's team to themselves. That is for sure. Stefan, we now know though for a fact that no one has been snared by PSR today.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.